Hey guys, Paul here with Patek. In this video, we are going to take a look once and for all and see if I can clear up any of the misconceptions surrounding the purpose and use of the Godox X1R, whether it be for Sony, which is, I have the Sony version, but I actually went out and purchased the Nikon version to just kind of cover all the bases here. So I did a video about a year ago and I got so many comments. One nice lady said, "Oh my God, thank you so much for doing this video. It's such a daunting task to kind of understand and get familiar with, you know, when you're trying to go off camera with your flash and radio triggers and how the whole thing works." And I just kind of happenstance did a video on the X1R and didn't really think too much about it. The whole idea of the X1R is basically, if you're shooting with Godox radio triggers and Godox Speedlights, and maybe you're coming from Nikon to Sony and you want to use one of your old Nikon Speedlights, you can use one of these gizmos and breathe some new life into your old Speedlights. And so that was sort of the premise for this video. So with no further ado, let's jump in, we'll have a look. Okay, so for this demonstration, I'm going to be shooting with my Sony a7 III here, and let's turn on the X2T, and I've got a Godox 860 V2. So, like I said, I used to be a Nikon shooter. I switched from Nikon to Sony a few years back. I'm totally immersed in the Godox system, but you know, the flashes that I'm going to demonstrate with, I've got a Nikon SB600, that's a kind of an antique. I've got young Nuo Speedlights, a 563, 564, and a 568EX. And so I'm going to show you what you can and cannot do in combination with the Godox system. And that's really, you know, what it comes down to. Now, the Godox X2T and the X Pro, it doesn't matter which one you use, you're going to get the same effect. So when I migrated to the Sony system, I bought the X1R with the S on it for Sony. And the reason is that I had, you know, some Speedlights, I had a monoblock, and I thought, geez, it'd be nice to be able to use those. So the video that I did a year ago, and I'll put a link here, so I'll show you a picture of this, and then my best advice to you, first thing you want to do is go and watch that video. And that'll cover sort of where I came from and got to in this video. And then I had a couple of guys connect in and they were asking questions about, you know, can I have remote control with my Nikon Speedlights using one of these X1Rs for Sony? And then I thought, well, what about the N version, right? And I've also reached out to Godox and asked them a couple of questions. So I know the answers to these questions, but just to be safe, I thought I'd check with them and see what their feedback is. So if they get back to me with some new revelation, I'll put that in the comments of the video and then we can all benefit from it. But to get started with, so, you know, I've got my camera turned on, I got my radio trigger turned on, Speedlights on. And so I could fire my Godox Speedlights no problem. I have two of these 860s. I have a 80-200 Pro, and those are the flashes that I use on a regular basis. So, but what if I want to use one of these other Speedlights? Okay, so let's bring in, I'll turn on the X1R for Sony here, and I'll put my Nikon SB600 on it, turn this on. Everything's in manual mode, by the way. And I could put this on and lock it down. And if I push the trigger button here, you can see that the flash fires. So the old Nikon Speedlights, they don't have any radio functionality built into them. So what should happen here is if I press the button here, the Godox Speedlight fires and the Nikon Speedlight fires. That's great. But the question that everybody asks me is, well, you know, can I use the X2T to control the power on the SB600 Speedlight? And the short answer is no, okay? Sorry to break it to you, but that's just the way it is. The reason is that this gizmo here is talking Godox, not Nikon. And because there's no radio control built into this Speedlight, you've got no chance whatsoever of controlling the power levels. So the whole beauty of this system is, let's say you switch your system to Nikon, or switch from Nikon, you've gone to Sony, you've got the same relative setup that I have here, and you've got an old Nikon SB 700, 900, whatever the denomination is, and you'd like to use that. No problem, okay? If you're on a budget, it's a lot cheaper to spend 50 bucks and buy one of these than it is to go out and buy one of these for $250. And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting you do that. The reason is, okay, is that at some point you're going to upgrade, I can guarantee you. So if you can afford it, when you switch to Sony, my advice is buy the X2T, buy yourself an 860 V2 or a V3 if you got a little bit more money, and you'll be set. If you want to have another speedlight, use one of your Nikon speedlights, then you can buy the X1R for Sony. Or you could buy the X1R for Nikon, or you might have one of these from your Nikon system. I don't know what your situation is. My advice is buy the X1R for Sony because you can plug it in and you can fire it. The only thing will be is that you'll have to walk over to the back of the speedlight and adjust your power levels on the back of the speedlight. This setup will fire it for you, but that's all it'll do. So the next thing I'm going to do, just for the heck of it, is I'm going to use the X1R for Nikon, and I'll put the SB600 on it. And I'll turn this away, and it fires them, right? So, you know, the X1RS, the X1RN, they're both doing the same thing. All they're doing is taking the trigger signal from this guy and firing the speedlights. So this one you'll have control. You can control the power level, no problem at all. This one you'll have no control. So that's the Nikon setup. Now, the only reason you might have the X1R if you're a Sony shooter, the X1R for Nikon if you're a Sony shooter, is maybe you had some Godox stuff when you're shooting Nikon. I don't know what your situation is. But so let's turn this off and take this out of the way. And we'll push that over here. Turn off my SB600 here. And now let's take, let's say that you're a young Nuo shooter. I have two of these 563s. Back in the day, these were wildly popular. I did videos on them, they're on the channel. You can have a look at those. And so let's turn on the X1R Sony, and let's turn on the 563. I'm in manual mode at 1:1. Let's pop this thing on here, and we'll see what happens. So both of the speed lights fire. Why is that? Because this is sending a signal to the X1R to fire, but that's all you get. There's no control. Now, you can change the groups and the channel settings here, depending on what you're doing, but you're still going to have to come over to the speedlight and change your power levels manually, okay? So let's try something else here. Enter the young Nuo 564, which had the radio control built into it. So let's see what happens. I'll turn this one on. So again, I'm in manual mode here. Let's see if I can bump the power up here so it's a little brighter. I'm in manual mode and I'm in TX mode. I'm on channel 1, group C, and so my X1R is channel 1 group C. So put this on, tighten it up, and it fires it because again the signal is going from here to here to fire, and that's really all you get. Now, even though the radio control is built into this one, it's young Nuo radio control. So this is talking Godox. The radio control built in here is young Nuo. So if you want to control the power level here, then you need the little master controller that young Nuo puts out. And that master controller is the YN560TX. So I can come over here and turn this thing on. And let's see, channel 1 group C. So I've got to come down here to group C, and let's see if I can vary the power level here. Because this is in TX mode. So this would have to be in RX mode for me to control it with this. So what you can see is you're getting into, you know, a level of complexity that's going to drive you know, most photographers crazy. So I don't recommend doing this. I think your best bet is to X2T, 860 V2 or 3, get 1 or 2 of these or 3 of these or what have you, and if you have an extra Nikon or an extra Yongnuo Speedlight, then just be happy with controlling them, just firing them and doing the manual control thing, because anything else is pretty much going to drive you wild. So let's do one more little test here. So this is the YN568EX, and this is a TTL Speedlight, and let's turn it on. And so it's in manual mode. It's at 1-to-1 power. And I'm pretty sure if I put this on here, it's going to fire it as well, as you can see. But I can't control the power level on this Speedlight here. So hopefully this gives you a better sort of understanding as to this whole Godox family of speedlights and controllers and what you can do and what you can't do. Again, my best advice is get yourself an X2T or an X Pro, an 860 V2 or 3, 8200 Pro if you need it, 8400, 8600. And if you want to use one of your old Nikons or old Yongnuo Speedlights, then just pick up the X1R for Sony, and you will be able to trigger, you know, any of the speedlights that I've shown you here, a monoblock, anything. If you look at my previous video, I was even able to trigger my old RL600B, which is made by Jinbei. And what I was able to do was run the sync cable from here to the RL600B to fire it. That worked great, but because the RL600B had a little separate controller that I could mount on the top of this guy here, I was able to control the power levels up and down on the RL600B with that little controller. So that made me really happy, because that's a 600 watt second monoblock. I can go out in the sun and do, in bright sunshine, and do a high-speed sync. So there you have it, guys. I mean, hopefully I've answered everybody's questions now. I mean, if you still have questions, by all means connect in. I'm happy to hear from you, but hopefully I've been able to clear this up. And like I said, if I get some feedback from Godox to the contrary, you know, maybe they're going to say you can have control with an SB 700 or 900 through this, but I don't think so, because the radio control is not built into it, and the language that these things are talking is completely different. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I think, you know, my advice, if you're a photographer, headshot guy like I am, I'm more photographer than I am videographer, but I think the Godox system is the way to go. It's a great investment. Everything talks to everything. Everything is easy to use. It's intuitive. And if you want some more detailed reviews, there is a guy, at least there used to be, Robert Hall Photography, Robert Hall, his YouTube channel, and he covers the Godox line of products and has done so for years thoroughly well. So if you want some more information on an individual product like an 8400 or 600 or something like that, he would be a good resource for you. So that's it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this useful, hit the subscribe and like buttons for me. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back at you in the not too distant future with, I think it's going to be a review on the SlidePod Pro, as a matter of fact. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.